Welcome to the Blogging Warfare Hangout, where we talk about blogging tips that are going to help you succeed in this world of online marketing. Today we've got a great show for you, and I'm just so excited to announce a good friend of mine that's going to be on this show. But first, let me say hello to my fellow blogging warriors. First off, we've got Robert Ryan from RobertRyanIE.ie. Hey, Rob.
Hello, Wade. Thank you very much for the introduction, and it's as always, it's great to be here. I suppose, to be honest, it's especially great to be here today because we've got Mike Alton, and I've been a big fan of his for quite a while. And I'm going to stop gushing now, and let's continue. Let's probe this man for all he's worth, people. Get your questions in.
That's good. And our sister in crime, Carolyn Capern. Hey, Carolyn, how are you?
Hey, Wade, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. I'm excited to talk to Mike, especially there's been a lot of comments, well, not a lot. I think Jason Weiser made the comment about Mike Alton being a Cylon because he is a blogging robot. And whenever I reference Mike Alton, I usually do use the hashtag blogging brute because he can crank those blog posts out. And not only, you know what, anybody, let's just go right into it. You know, Mike, I really appreciate, number one, I really appreciate you coming on the show. You've been a really good friend of mine for a long time now, and had the pleasure of meeting you in person, and I've also had the pleasure of watching you do some things, which I'm going to bring up later. But just thank you so much for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. This is going to be fun. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Now, before I get started, do one of you want to ask the first question? I'm going to back up for one of my cohorts.
Sure, I'll jump in and take the first one. Mike, I think a nice place to start. You know, you and I are both history buffs, so I'm just going to ask you to give a little history lesson on your history, the history of and the history of the social media hat. How'd you get started, and what's the story there?
Sure. I've been blogging for wow, 6 to 8 years probably, long time. And you know, when I started off blogging, it was to support a web design business, and I started to find that I didn't like blogging about web design specifically, and most people didn't like reading about web design. It's kind of boring. So I started writing about social media, and I started writing about blogging. And at the time, again, this is 6, 7 years ago, those posts were interesting. They were popular comparatively to my others. And I enjoyed writing them, but of course they didn't sell websites. So when the economy went down a few years ago and some other issues, I started a whole new business, the social media hat. And the whole purpose there was so that I could combine my passion for writing, my passion for writing about blogging and about social media and SEO and marketing with an actual business that it would make sense to have that kind of content. So I created the social media hat. It launched Labor Day 2012, and the initial format was almost like a news portal, like a Mashable style site, where so if you go to thesocialmediahat.com, you're going to see my latest articles, and it's not one big ad for my services. It's just a portal to all of my content, so that my readers can teach themselves and find out how to do stuff, what's happening in the social media world. Those kinds of things, and it's really developed and evolved from there.
Now, don't you think that's where a lot of bloggers kind of fail a little bit because they do want to push their products and their services out? And you know, I know that's where I failed when I first started. All I wanted to do was make money right away, and I didn't really grasp the concept of helping people at first. What do you think about new bloggers coming into the industry that's, you know, has money on the brain?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because a brand new blog, you're not going to make any money. You know, and that's the truth. And anybody that tells you otherwise, quite frankly, they're probably lying. It's going to take you a long time to start to earn an income as a true blogger. Now, let's make a distinction here between somebody who is blogging as a career, as a living, versus a business that uses a blog to talk about who they are and what they do and their clients and so on. It's really a different mindset. You know, the business on this side of the spectrum, they're selling a product, they're doing other kinds of marketing, they're using content marketing as that medium. On the other hand, there are bloggers. and somebody who they're creating content and they're hoping and praying that that content brings them cash somehow. And we can talk about the ways that you can make money from a blog. But you're right, Wade. The first step is to provide value, and this is why I love your show so much, because it all boils down to relationships. You can't just throw out content and expect that people are just going to start paying you. You have to form relationships. You have to take that time to connect with other bloggers, potential clients, influencers, vendors, all kinds of different people in your various industries and niches that are going to help you build your business.
Yeah, I agree with that. And another thing, and I'm remembering myself when I first started, because when I would go on social media, I would see these posts that had 400 or 500 reshares and 600-700 likes. This was on Facebook and things like that. And my big thing was I need to create something that's going to go viral like that. And even to this day, I've had only one post to go viral, and that was on Google Plus. And that I wouldn't even really constitute it as being a viral post. I think it had 200 or so plus ones and three or 400 reshares. I don't know if that qualifies as on being viral or not, but I guess there's different stages. But you're right. I mean, you have to build a tribe of people that are talking about the same things you're talking about and help each other, because you really you can't do it. You can't do it by yourself, and that I'm a big stickler for telling people that, because everybody wants to ask me. I've had I had 6 emails today. Show me how to make money with my blog, and I done a one-line sentence. I said, are you prepared for 6 months of no money? For 8 months of no money, and a lot of people aren't. You think that's why a lot of people quit, is because of the money?
Oh, sure. And it's really like any business, any profession. If you go into it with the wrong mindset, with the wrong expectations, you're going to be disappointed and prone to the kind of things that would lead somebody to just quit. It's happened to me. In between the web design business and the blogging business, I tried working for another company for like 4 months, and it wasn't what they said it would be. It wasn't what I expected. So it only lasted 4 months, and I quit. And I went on to do the social media full time. But the real key here for bloggers is to think about things one person at a time. You mentioned, Wade, hoping that you'll have a post that goes viral. Well, that's cool, but it doesn't happen that often. Even to companies where it does happen, it's not that often. I've probably had 3 posts that I would constitute as going viral. So, one of my favorite authors, probably the best authors of our generation, is Stephen King. And this is Stephen King's lesson. He writes his books, he says, for one person, his wife. As he's writing, he thinks about whether or not his wife would like what it is that he's writing. Would she read this? Would she be interested in this? If not, it's rubbish, and pitches it. And as bloggers, that's, I think, the mindset that we should have. We should be writing for one person at a time. Now, sometimes that might be an actual specific person that you're thinking of, and sometimes it might be a persona. I can tell you what I mean by that. One of the great tools that we have as bloggers is to use our past blog content and social media to ask questions and get other people asking questions, because then you can answer those questions in future blog posts. So if somebody asks me a question on Google+, and I need to write more than 3 sentences to answer that question, the first thing I'm thinking of in the back of my mind is, this is going to be a blog post. And there have been times when I have literally copied and pasted a comment into Evernote and turned that into a future blog post. I'm writing for that one person. I know that one person had this question, and I may have already answered it for that one person. But the odds are, for every one person that had that question, there are 100 more people that had that question you didn't know about. Hopefully you can reach those people with your blog. The other side of it is having a persona, somebody that is a fictitious person but embodies the qualities and the aspects and the demographics of the kind of audience you want to reach. You might have 2, 3, or 4 different people, or just one. Just depends on your business, what you're blogging about. You know, give them a name, call them Johnny, whatever you want to do. But Johnny should have some very specific attributes: an age, a geographic area, an income, specific interests, specific needs, specific issues. What is Johnny suffering from? What is Johnny's pain points? Because that's what you need to be writing about.
That's a powerful tip. I mean, you know, for to tell someone that, because when you're blogging, you're thinking, well, whenever I first started, I'm thinking of, you know, millions of people are going to see my content, so I've got to write for the general public, the general population. But when you specify and you narrow and pinpoint and you write for that one person, it makes it more personal, it makes it relational. People can see your point of view because you have, you know, just kind of saw what they were going through. You know, you've answered a question or something. And that's exactly right. I mean, I totally agree with that point, because, you know, when you can write for that one individual, you're exactly right. There's going to be 100 others that have the same questions or the same needs. Rob, do you have a question for Mike?
Oh, I do, and I've been biding my time and waiting patiently and sitting on my hands for this moment to arrive. I've lots of questions, and to be honest, Mike, I was kind of nodding in agreement, humming in the background, and jotting down notes. So it's kind of like a consultation I've always wanted with you, and it is quality stuff. So people who are listening, this is the good. But let's delve a little bit deeper into the good and really get inside that cranium full of mana for online marketing. What would you say out of the services that you offer? And again, I spent a bit of time on your site, so I know you have kind of consulting, you have hands-on social management as a service, you also, I presume you have affiliates, AdSense, you also provide training, and you have your own product, the book on Hootsuite, or the unofficial book on Hootsuite. But what would you say has been the most successful avenue for you to go down to, as you said, to make some money? Because if you're not making money, you know that the wheels will come off somewhere eventually. So what would you recommend to new bloggers, you know, once with the caveat that it's going to take 6 to 8 months before you see anything come back, really? But what has been the most successful for you?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, the answer is not an easy one. I mean, it's easy for me to give the answer, but it's not going to be easy for you as a new blogger to implement what I'm about to say. Because most people say, oh, okay, I can start blogging about a particular topic, and I can put AdWords on my site, and I can make money off of ads, right? That's rubbish. You're not going to make any money off of ads. You know, you'll be lucky to make $50, $100 a month, and then you're not going to get paid unless you make more than $100 a month. So it's going to be every other month you might get a check for $150, $200, and that's going to take time to get to that point anyways, because you need the volume to support that. So you have a brand new blog and you put ads on it. You're not going to make any money off the ads because you don't have the volume of people coming to the site to click on the ads to actually generate enough revenue to mean anything. And Google is not in the business of sending traffic to websites that are just trying to make money back off of Google. So the fact is, it's possible that putting ads on a brand new blog site will actually hurt your search engine traffic. Don't buy into the promise that you can just create content and put ads on it and make buckets of money. It's not true. And there's a similar problem with affiliate ads. People just don't click on affiliates all the time. It's possible to create lucrative affiliate relationships, but it's not easy. Again, you can't just throw some content on a site and put an Amazon link on it and people are just going to start buying out the guzzo because you told them to. It doesn't work that way. You have to have developed the relationships, the clout, the influence. I mean, you know, we talk about influence marketing a lot, but what that boils down to is if I have influence, that means if I say something, there's a certain segment of people that will listen to what I have to say. Okay? I have an audience. I have a tribe. I have a platform, as Michael Hyatt would put it. If you're a brand new blogger, the reality is you don't have a platform. You don't have a tribe. You don't have an audience. You're just starting. Even if you've been doing it for a few months, you still really haven't established much of a following. You don't have any influence yet. So you really can't influence people at this point to go buy a product. So we're back to, okay, that's not really effective either for making money quickly. So the unfortunate reality is the best avenue for a blogger to make money is if they're selling their own expertise. And that's hard. You know, it can be done quickly, but what it requires is that you create content that is exceedingly good at demonstrating your authority. And of course, you have to have that authority to demonstrate in the first place. You know, if you're just getting started in this industry, you want to be a social media marketer, so you're going to start blogging about social media. I think that's fantastic. But there's a learning curve there. You have to learn all these platforms yourself before you can accurately demonstrate that you know what you're talking about to other people and actually be of service to them. So if you're a new blogger and you're blogging about something that you really know and you're really passionate about it, it's going to take a lot of work, but it's possible to do it quickly depending on how much time you're able to put into it. If you know, let's say you were to write for an hour a day every single day, and you were to work on publishing at least a post every other day, depending on how fast you're able to write, you could get there pretty quickly where you start to attract people who are willing to pay you to help them with whatever it is you're blogging about.
So
now, I'm sorry, go ahead, Carolyn.
I was going to say, so speaking of the how fast you're able to write question, you are actually legendary in that arena. So shall we dovetail off into that topic and how you pull that off?
Sure, sure. And I'm glad you asked because yeah, it's something that gets talked about a lot, and I love sharing this kind of information. There are quote unquote secrets here only because it's not necessarily obvious. Blogging is like anything else that you might want to do and learn in life. It takes time to become good at it. I'm still learning. I'm still becoming a better blogger. And if you're starting today and you're writing your first blog post ever and you aren't an accomplished writer in other means, other forms of content, it's going to take you a while to get good at it. And by getting good, part of that is pure speed. And I was on a call the other day with somebody, and we were talking about typing speed. And he was all thrilled that he types 70, 80 words per minute, and he just kind of, I guess, assumed that I must be some kind of world-class typist, right? Because I can blog so fast, I must be able to just go like this and just turn it Yeah, it's that Jim Carrey gif, right? You know, where you're just doing this in front of the computer.
There goes another blog post.
I'm staring at my computer screen, and I'm hunting. Maybe 62 words per minute is like my top speed, which is not fast by any stretch. So it's not the speed of typing. It's practice, and it's familiarity with your topic, among other things.
Let me ask you this before we get any deeper into this. Everybody is different, and whenever I first started, I wanted to get my content out there. I didn't have an audience yet, but all I wanted to do was write. Now that I'm like you, I feel like that you are a professional at what you do. I'm not at the level that you are at, and again, everybody is different. So when people ask me how many times should I blog a week, I've got my opinion on that, but in the back of my mind, I know that Mike Alton, you can write a blog post every day if you wanted to. I could write a blog post every day, but I don't believe I could provide the value that is needed to get, to bring that help to people. So even though you could write a blog post every day, and you can do it great, and you provide value, and I'm not saying that you don't, because I've seen it. I've seen your posts. You provide helpful content and value every time. But there's going to be some people out there that just want to get their content out. What would you say to these people that could write a blog post every day, but then you look at their content and they're like, these people shouldn't really do this? What's the mindset to that?
Well, part of it goes back to what I was just saying, in that we all have to start as beginners when it comes to blogging. So if we went back to some of the first posts that I ever published, they're rubbish. They are. They were crap. I was just starting. And I only knew maybe not even half of what I know today about the material, let alone how to blog, how to create nice content, and all the different things that go into making a nice blog post. So that was that. And I certainly didn't write as fast then as I do now. But your question's a fantastic one, and it's a topic that comes up every single time I'm sitting down with a client and we're talking about blogging. How often should they blog? And the right answer is it depends on them. It depends on their business, their goals, and their capabilities in terms of how, just realistically, how much could they churn out in a day or a week or a month. And there's statistical information that I always bring into the conversation, which is that it's been statistically shown that in order to start to get significant search engine traffic, your website needs to have at least 50 pieces of content in your archive. That's an average, so obviously every individual business is going to vary. But HubSpot did a study a couple years ago, and they looked at thousands of businesses who were using blog content, and they did this wonderful graph. I'm going to go opposite way. The search engine traffic was like this. It was just steadily but slowly growing until those sites tended to hit about 50 pieces of content, and then it did this. And that's an amazing, amazing piece of information. And so we used that as part of the goal setting. So we asked the client, how fast do you want to get to that point? If you're okay with getting there a year from now, well, then you can blog once per week, and after a year, you'll have 50 to 52 blog posts, and that's where you'll be. If you want to,
I'm sorry. Doesn't that go, kind of cut in? If you said it depends on the time frame. What if somebody just cranked out 50 blog posts just for the sake of getting to that point, but the content really wasn't there? Well, I mean, you have to have the great content and the thought process in there too, right?
That's absolutely right, and that is the underlying truth behind anything that I'm saying. You can't put out. I mean, that's bottom line rule. You have to put out quality blog posts. Now we can talk about lengths. Not every blog post has to be 1,000 words, or there's some rules along those lines. But you have to be providing value. You have to be providing information. Sure, that's absolutely right. But, so most businesses, honestly, what I tell them is 2 to 3 blog posts per week would be the ideal. If everything else is equal and they could just choose how often they're going to blog 2 or 3 times a week, that's for a business, like a small to medium business. Now, if we're talking about a blogger, that's what you want to do, is you want to blog? Well, okay, then you have to blog. You have to do it. You have to write, and that should be on a daily basis. You have to be writing every single day. Doesn't mean necessarily you have to publish every day. That's, again, going to vary with how much value you can provide, how much time it takes you. Some people, when they write, they're extremely well-researched, thought-provoking, detailed posts that might take 4 or 5 hours or more to write. And I get that. Some of the posts that I write are like that. Many of them aren't, but some of them are, and they take a long time to produce. But still, you should be writing every single day. And you should have that time set aside in your day. 7 to 8 a.m. every single day. I'm not doing anything else. My phone's off. My notifications are off. I'm not looking at an email. I'm writing.
And what would you say, Mike, once the people start to accumulate the content, how should they go about syndicating it? Because I know recently a client of mine, she spent a lot of time doing a really long blog post on Kate Middleton shoes of all things, and I said, look, you should really put a little bit of follow-through action into this to see if you can give it some social lift or get some, other bloggers to link to it, etc. And so she reached out on Twitter, and she got a huge blogger, and one of the biggest in LA seemingly. Not that I know anything about fashion, but that person then shared it on and linked to it, which has given her a torrent of traffic as of late. But what would you say people should actually do so they can go and get this torrent of traffic once they put in the effort into creating the good content?
Well, I do know that you're a fashion mogul. You're probably wearing Prada right now on your feet.
No, I'm not fashionable at all. God, I'm fashion. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And you mentioned a term, probably not deliberately, but you said syndication. And I want to clarify for some of the people watching that there's a difference between promoting a blog post and syndicating a blog post. Okay, as a blogger in my industry, for instance, in our industry, we can create a relationship with Social Media Today or business2community.com and have our blog posts automatically reprinted on their sites. So that's called syndication. And then, they say, Mike Alton authored this post, and there's a link back to the original post, but it's the full article right there on their site. That's syndication. And I make a distinction there because I don't think that's usually a good idea for most bloggers, particularly for new bloggers. Because what happens is you've got your blog, and then you've got a copy of it on Social Media Today. Okay. So how many of us have websites that are more popular than social media today? Not me. Probably no one else. Probably no one else listening to this call, right? So if you go to do a Google search on the topic that you wrote about, whose site's going to be listed first? Social Media Today or yours that you just started yesterday? Social Media Today. And that's the problem that I found. I started syndicating my content to Social Media Today and Business Community and some others, and I did it for like 6 months. And I was getting no search engine traffic at all. And I didn't understand because I had gone way past that 50 pieces of content mark. But I was lucky to get a couple hundred visits a month from Google. And it was ridiculous how little traffic I was getting. And then I don't remember how, but I got clued into this syndication issue. I don't know if it came to me or somebody said something. And I realized that the syndicated content was ranking higher than the original content. So I shut that down, and you can see, if you look at my Google Analytics, my search engine traffic went like this. Because it's all original content now, it's not appearing anyplace else. So for new bloggers, I don't recommend that. It's nice as a way to get your content out in your name and exposure and reach. I have absolutely gotten business as a result of having my content on those sites. So don't get me wrong, but there's a trade-off there. So then the real part of your question is promoting the blog post. And I could talk for another 3 hours about that. I've got a 25-point checklist about all the things that I do after I hit publish on a blog post. And I'll just run through a few of them, and you can ask questions, I guess. So the first thing that I do every time I have a brand new blog post is I tweet it out. And I make sure, both for myself and for my clients, that we have great social sharing buttons on the blog post itself. I use them, and I want my readers to use them. I want my content shared to social. And in fact, I insist on having nice social buttons that actually have the counters on there. As much as we might not like the counters and the numbers, because it's a game, but the reality is it's social proof. If you see that somebody shared my post 1,000 times to Google+, that tells you something. So unfortunately, I'm going to tell you, play that game. Put those counters on there so that everybody knows, yeah, okay, because it's a prompt. It's a psychological prompt. If other people are doing it, maybe I should do it too.
Some social proof.
Yeah, so the first thing I do is tweet it out. And I do that to my personal Twitter account. I've got personal and brand accounts on every platform. But I tweet it out to my personal Twitter account, just the title with a link and probably a couple hashtags. Second thing is Pinterest. Okay. I always make sure my blog posts have a great branded image, not just some random picture, but it's got to be a picture that I've edited and put some text on it and put the name of my business on it, something that says it's from me and from my site, and that goes to Pinterest. And I leave that open in a new tab. I've set up my site to use rich pins, so the pins that I do to Pinterest look as good as they possibly can. Then I share to Google+, and this is the big one. This is the big deal for me. And every blogger is going to be different. Everybody uses different social networks and have their different priorities, and that's fine. But for me, Google+ is my bread and butter. So I will spend up to half an hour composing the Google+ share. And if you look at some of my previous posts, you can probably see why. Because I will write almost a mini blog on Google+ about the blog that I'm sharing. I usually refer to this as an introduction or a commentary. But I'll use a bolded title. I'll write probably at least 2, maybe 5 or more paragraphs. I'll mention people if it's appropriate. Maybe I quoted them in the blog, something along those lines, or I'm talking about a brand, so I'll mention them. I'll use always 3 hashtags at the bottom. Typically, lately, I'm sharing to Google+ as a link preview because I'm using big enough images on my blog post that I get the nice big link treatment or image treatment on Google+, the 500 width by 301 height. But sometimes I'll share it as an image, include 1 link in the description. And that's important. There's only 1 link in my commentary. And I have 2 blog notification circles. So when I'm choosing the audience for these new Google+ posts, I choose public, and I have 2 circles of people that have told me in advance, yes, Mike, I want to be notified when you have new content. There's a total of about 400 people between those two circles. So I'm going to share it to public and instantly notify about 400 people that I've just shared something new. That they,
okay, let's sidebar right there. Let's sidebar right there. Tell people how are you creating those, because you can't just put random people in your circles because it ticks people off. Tell people how to do that on Google+.
Right, and what I'm talking about here is when you share anything on Google+, and you choose one or more circles, as soon as you choose a circle, a little checkbox shows up beneath the audience field that says also send email. And most of the time, this should be hands off. Don't ever touch it. Don't ever click it. Unless you have an opt-in circle, a circle where the people have told you in advance, yeah, okay, it's all right if you email. It's okay if you notify me. Because that also send email should say also send notification depending on the user's settings. Because you don't know how they have their notification set up. They could get the little red bell. They could get an email. They could get an SMS text message. And the last thing you want to do is send people text messages when they didn't ask you to.
Yeah.
So you have this circle, and what you do is you create if you've never done it before, back up a second and let me say that this is not, again, something for the brand new first-time blogger. You want to have developed at least a little bit of rapport and audience before you even try this technique. Otherwise, you're not going to get any interest. You have to have some following who knows you provide value. But once you're to that point, and it could be after a month or two, whatever, you'll create one public post to Google+ and say, hey, if you'd like to be notified when I'm sharing my new content and I talk about these things, just leave me a comment below. And you do that, I personally do that about once a month or so. Some people, like I know Wade, will include that invitation on the bottom of his brand new post.
I also tell people that when I notify them, expect the email. You're going to get a notification here on Google+, and I tell them, and in your email. So I make sure, even though they may have the notifications turned off on the email, I make sure that that is, known anyway.
Yeah, that's right. And then keep in mind, the reason I have two different circles is because Google+ will limit how many people you can send an email to, or you can notify, or you can share with on a day-to-day basis. So sometimes, if I've got a second blog post or something, maybe just Google+ being goofy, I can't always include the larger circle. So I capped that at 299 people, and then I started a second circle. Most people, they're just going to start with one, and they'll build that from there.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep talking.
Yeah. So, I share that Google+ post, and as soon as I do that, I go back to my profile, refresh so I can see it, and I open that Google+ post in a new tab. So I've got that specific Google+ post open in its own tab. I go to Pinterest, the tab that I had open for that pin that I just shared, grab the URL, and I paste that into the first comment. So I am almost always the first person to comment on my own Google+ posts, and I'm including a link to the Pinterest pin. Because there are a lot of people in Google+ who really like to go to Pinterest and basically bookmark the post that you just shared. And then of course it'll continue to share from there. So now you're getting activity on your Pinterest pin as well as your Google+ post. I also +1 my own posts, plus myself.
Before we get any further, we've got some comments in here, and I would also like to tell you guys there are a couple of Miss Eileen Smith is in the audience, and Gerard Forte. And there are more people watching than commenting. We have got something to give away here at Blogging Warfare today, and we're going to count the people that comment. So if you have a question for Mike, go ahead and put it in the comments. Gerard says that I look sort of blushed today. That's because I'm not wearing my makeup, Gerard.
Didn't get enough time to powder the nose.
Yeah. But he does have another good question, Mike. He says, what are your thoughts on pillar content or epic posts? He's heard that longer form content is getting favorable attention from search. So can you touch on that?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Gerard, because that is absolutely true. So here's what I tell clients. I teach them to think about 3 different kinds of blog posts. The standard post, right in the middle. What that means, it will vary from blogger to blogger, but typically you're going to be in the 500 to 750 word range. Kind of a nice, quick 5-minute read. Not a lot of statistics or that kind of stuff. Just, what do you think about this particular topic? Or you're teaching something that you already know to your audience. Should take you, once you've been doing this for a while, probably no more than an hour to write that. Okay, that's a standard post, and that's what you should be producing on a day-to-day basis most of the time. The other end of the spectrum is the cheater post. And a cheater post, an example, might be take an HOA video and embed it on a blog post and introduce it with a paragraph, or maybe add your thoughts at the end and share it. That might have taken you 10 minutes to write that. You probably only wrote 200 words or less, and you're relying on somebody else's content to really drive interest in that particular blog post. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as that's not your normal post. Remember, that's not the standard post. That's the cheater post. You're cheating for a reason. As long as you're providing value, your readers won't mind it. Just don't take advantage of them. Go grab a SlideShare presentation if it's great. Danny Brown used to do that every single Sunday. I thought it was a fabulous idea. He'd take 5 minutes to write a nice introduction to a great SlideShare he found and embed it. And you can do that with YouTube videos. You can do that with infographics, any other kind of multimedia content. It's a great way to get that extra post in there, particularly if you're on a deadline and maybe your regular post isn't ready for whatever reason. So then the opposite end is that epic post. The epic post, by definition, really should be 1,500 words or more, and will probably take you weeks, if not months, to write. It's got to be researched. It's got to have a lot of information. It's going to have links to other resources. It's the kind of thing that when somebody reads it, they can't help but to share it because it's so good. They can't help but to link to it because it's so awesome. It's so epic. That's why it's called epic. It needs to actually be epic. If you're looking at this thing that you've written and it's a couple thousand words, but you're like, that's not epic. Yeah. And the reason why it's so effective, a couple reasons. Number one, because it's so long, it's so many words, and it's epic, which means it's well written, you're probably using your core keywords on a regular basis. A couple of weeks ago, I wrote 4,500 words about LinkedIn. It was how to create the perfect LinkedIn profile. And I went through 20 different things, 20 different areas to look at on your LinkedIn profile. Okay. How many times do you think I used the word LinkedIn in that post? I mean, I didn't count, but I'm sure it was 100. Yeah, easy. Because I'm referring to different things. I'm telling people go here and so on. So it happens naturally. And again, by definition, if you're creating epic content, that means other people are going to appreciate it, other people are going to like it, and they're going to link to it. And that's what makes it truly so popular in search. Nobody's going to link to that 200-word post where you embedded a YouTube video. There's no reason for them to do that. They can just go to the video if they want to reference it in the future, or they can embed the video themselves. But if you took the time to really create value and a lot of rich content, a lot of good information, they're going to appreciate that. They're going to remember it. They're going to want to bookmark it. They're going to want to link to it in their own blog posts. That's what makes it epic, and that's what makes it popular in search.
Yeah. But I guess to be able to create the epic content, it's kind of like what Eric Enge refers to. You have to be an expert in something, or else you just go home.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You got to be an expert in something. And again, this is why when I'm talking to my clients about this kind of thing, I would suggest to them that don't even try to create epic content all the time. It's not worth it for you. It's not a good use of your time. You do need those regular standard blog posts so that you're getting a decent volume out there and you're getting in front of your readers on a regular basis. In fact, if you've got a blog post that's 1,500 to 2,000 words, rather than thinking of it as an epic or a pillar post, I often tell my clients just split that into 2 different posts and make it a series. 3,000 words, can we split that into thirds? And now you've got a 3-part series on that particular topic. To be an epic, to be a pillar post, it's got to be special. It's going to be more to it than just the length. It's got to be a resource that you know people want, and you know people are going to continue to look at that and look for it in search months down the road. So once you've been doing this for a long time, by a long time I mean at least 6 to 12 months, you'll have a feel for the content that you've written in the past that was successful, what resonates with your audience, and what do they need. I knew that this LinkedIn post was a need because I kept getting the question. I'd be on a call with a client, and they would ask me, okay, how do I optimize my LinkedIn profile? What do we got to do? What do we got to change? Because many people were using their LinkedIn profile to get jobs or using it as a resume. But I'm not working with people who want a job. I'm working with people who want clients. They want work. And so they want to use their LinkedIn profile to speak to other businesses, and that's entirely different. It's a whole different animal. They didn't know how to do that. So after months of going through that over the phone with clients or via email, I started taking notes. And at some point we should talk about my Evernote system. But this is where these things live and breathe. I've got an Evernote system, so I could just pop into that blog post in progress at any point, make another note. Oh yeah, I don't forget, talk about that. Don't forget to talk about the profile picture. Don't forget to talk about how many languages you're offering on your post. And that's, as that stuff came to me, I would make a note. So that way when I actually sat down and wrote that 4,500 word post, it took me an hour and a half.
It was just a case of expanding or fleshing out all the points that you had then.
Yeah. Now we've got some more questions, and I know we're running a little late here, but I want to try to get to all the questions for Mike. Eileen, she says, we're talking about the social proof, Mike. She says, how do you feel about using share counts for clients when they only have a handful of shares? Like less than 10 or whatever. Do you hide the counts in that case?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I hate doing this, but the answer is it depends. It depends on the client, the content, the industry. And I'll give you one example of what I'm talking about. If I'm dealing with a client in an industry where it's just not reasonable to expect that this would ever improve for them, then we can hide it. Because it's silly just to show one share to Facebook and that's it for that particular post. But that's kind of the exception. Most of the time, particularly if you are a true blogger, I want to see those share counts. And I don't care how low they are. I want to see them. I want you to use them and demonstrate them. And again, this is why I go back to I've got the social share buttons on my site, and I use them. Because the first time another reader comes to my site, by the time they actually get to the article to read it, I've already hit all the buttons myself.
Mm-hmm.
They all show a count of 1 or more right away because of the way that I promote my blog posts.
And I think that's an important one as well, though, because oftentimes people are hesitant to be the first one to make a step. So if you have the first plus ones there, that can encourage others to follow suit then.
Absolutely.
Now you just dropped the teaser about your Evernote system. I'm dying to learn about it. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So we talked about what it takes to be a good blogger, to be a fast blogger, and a lot of that was mindset and experience. The other part of that is having processes in place. So a big part of my process is the tool Evernote. So if you haven't used Evernote, it's a note-taking tool. It's an app, and it's free. There's a premium version that I've never needed, and I use this tool all day, every day. So it lives on my computer. I've got it installed on my MacBook, and there's a version for Windows, and it's also on my iPad, and it's also on my iPhone. Everywhere, every device I'm using, no matter which device I'm using, if I jump in and I create a note, within seconds it's synced up to the Evernote cloud and then synced back down to each of my devices. Okay, so that's the basic use of Evernote. It allows you to remember everything. But the real key here is having organization and a system in place. So within Evernote, you can have different notebooks that organize your notes. And then within each notebook, you can have as many notes as you want. So I have a notebook just for blogging, or blog. And within that notebook, I have a note started for every idea that I've had for a blog post. Doesn't matter where I'm at. I can be, you know, I was in the shower and I had an idea for a blog post. As soon as I get out of the shower, my phone's right there on the sink. Open it up, jump into Evernote, and put that idea down on, you know, digital paper. Because I guarantee by the time I get to my office 45 minutes later, I will have forgotten that idea, even though it may have been the best thing since sliced bread. It's gone because my memory sucks.
Yeah, Evernote for mobile has been a lifesaver for me.
Absolutely. You know, so at a minimum, we're talking about capturing those ideas. Okay? And that's where it starts. You capture the ideas. In fact, when I first start that notebook, I create a first note just for blog ideas, and I go there and I just brainstorm. You know, just start typing every idea that I could possibly have for a blog post. And I'll help clients walk through this. I'll help them try to think about, okay, what are all the possible questions that my clients might have for me? And those are things I'm going to answer via blog, right? So we have that. And then from that point forward, every time we have an idea, or every time you've got one of those ideas in your brainstorming list that you want to expand upon, pull it out of there and put it into its own note. And then you can start the actual blog. And when you start the actual blog, it's not about sitting down and looking at a blank piece of paper anymore. Number one, you've already got the idea. And depending on where you were at the time that you had the idea, there might be more to it. Maybe you were inspired by somebody else's article. Maybe you had a conversation with somebody. And you put all that into your Evernote. And how you do it can be up to you. I usually leave some space at the top of the note, and then I draw a line, and then down here is what we would call a scratch pad, my notes. Might be links to other sites, might be links to a blog, Google Plus post, might be copied and pasted some comments, or just basic ideas, a sketched outline, whatever it is that I'm thinking might help me write this blog post, even if I can't actually take the time to write it at that moment. So then over time, as the weeks and days and months go by, and you know you're just the idea that you have goes into this Evernote notebook, you'll get like me. Honestly, you'll get like me, and you'll have 40 or 50 blog posts that are in progress. That's what I have right now. People wonder why I can blog every day. It's not because I write necessarily every day, even though I love to. It's because I've got 50 blog posts started. You know. And I can just jump into Evernote anytime I want to and grab a blog post that might be 99% finished. I might just need, excuse me, to finish the title. Or maybe there was another article I wanted to go and grab some statistics from, so I just pasted the article in there and I haven't finished that yet. Or maybe I just have that brief outline. Whatever it is, they're in different states. So that's where all of my in-progress blog posts are. And I will usually come up with a calendar for myself as I start to map these out. I'll say, okay, I'm doing this LinkedIn post. I want to make sure that I publish that the first week of July, and I might even assign that to a specific date. It's up to you. So then when the blog post is finished, you know, I've gone back to that Evernote note, and I've filled it in, and I've totally finished it, and I'm ready to put it on my website. I just copy and paste the content out of Evernote into my website. I do my formatting on the site, I add the image, and I add the links, I do all the other nuances that go into making a great blog post. And when that's done, I've published, and I've done all the promotion, I go back into Evernote, and I'll take that blog that's now published, and I'll move it into a completely different notebook called Archive. So now that's out of there, and I go and I look at my blogging notebook, and it's still just the in-progress, unpublished posts.
That's a lot. Ooh.
And I've actually been just taking a few notes here. This is educational.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, I have a third Evernote notebook that's kind of like a burn pile. I don't know if you've ever had a burn bucket or a burn pile. I mean, that's, you know,
The duds, the ones that didn't make the grade.
Yeah, these are for the rubbish. You know, I had a blog post I started writing a couple years ago. It was going to be a Dear John letter to another blogger. I was breaking up with their blog, and it wasn't about a real blog, it was just a fictional thing. But the idea was I was going to break up with your blog for all these reasons. all the things that you did wrong to me as a blogger, because and I'm the reader and I'm just not enjoying your blog. And I thought it would make for a great blog, and to this day it's just crap. And I got tired of looking at it, honestly, and think, oh my gosh, there's that thing again. You know, I spent hours a couple years ago trying to create a metaphor between content marketing and building castles. And I thought that would be so cool. And I was going to talk about castle building, and you know, Carolyn, I want to weave some of the history in there of castle building, and it went nowhere. I mean, it was a great story about castles, but I couldn't wrap my hands around the connections I wanted between castle building and content marketing. So you know, I don't want to look at that anymore. I don't want to keep being reminded of it. But I don't want to delete it. You know, because there's that emotional attachment to something you've been working on for months. So, yeah, I put it in a separate notebook, and I don't usually go in there very often. But that's my system. 3 notebooks. That blogging notebook's the most important one. Make sure that anytime you have any kind of an idea for a blog post, no matter what it is you're doing, stop right now and at least get that idea down into Evernote. If you have the time to flush that out a little bit, make yourself an outline for what you want to talk about, bring in some bullet points, fantastic. The other thing that I think gives the impression that I'm a really fast blogger is that I love to blog about breaking news. It's referred to as newsjacking. David Meerman Scott wrote the book Newsjacking, and he talked about the importance of coming in at the right time and the style that you need to take and all these kinds of things that go into basically journalism as a blogger. And so I've got systems set up that frankly notify me when something happens. I've got Google alerts, I've got RSS feeds into Feedly, you know, different kind. I've got, you know, specific people in a Google Plus circle for notifications. Like it used to be Vic Gunduntra. If Vic posted to Google Plus, I was getting a notification because it was either a cool pic of his family or it was something cool happening in Google Plus. And either way, I wanted to see it. I didn't blog about the family pics, but I'd often blog about the Google Plus stuff. Mm-hmm. So you have those systems in place. But to be truly successful as a newsjacking process, you have to be flexible in your time. And we can't all do that. And increasingly, I'm actually doing it less and less. But if there's a breaking news story, you have to decide, do I want to write about this? Can I afford to take the time to write about this? And can I do a good enough job when I'm doing it?
Wow, that's a lot of information. I mean, this is going to be so helpful for the new blogger and the seasoned blogger as well. We're almost out of time. Let's get to it. Let's do one more question, and also Carolyn has wrote a comment about we're giving away the Social Fresh T-shirt. So what do you want them to do, Carolyn? Leave a favorite hashtag for Mike or your favorite blog.
Yeah, make up a hashtag for Mike, like a hashtag blogging Cylon or something like that. Don't steal that one, or just list your favorite blog to read, and you can have the chance to win this gorgeous green Social Fresh T-shirt.
Nice.
Cool.
I want one of those.
Let me get to Angela's question. I've had it in queue right here. She says, what is the time span for releasing series blog posts that you have found works the best for keeping people's attention because there's so much good content out there to read?
That's a great question. And typically, what I recommend for clients is that they just do them in succession. So don't do part 1, and then your next blog is totally unrelated. And then you do part 2, and then a totally unrelated blog. You know, so there's, you know, make sure that you do part 1, and then part 2, and part 3. Whatever your regular blogging schedule is, whether it's every other day or once a week, keep to that schedule. That's fine. That's what people have come to expect from you. But yeah, just don't put a break in between unless it's really, really important, like a breaking news or something like that. Yeah, but keep that on your normal schedule.
Actually, here's another good question from Eileen Smith. I'll pin it here, and it's for you again, Mike. But what is the vetting process you use for guest authors?
Yeah, I saw that. Another great question from Eileen.
Yeah.
filled with great questions. And this brings up the whole topic of guest blogs. And again, if you're going to be a true professional blogger, that's all you're doing, and you're blogging on your website, having guest contributors is a wonderful thing if you can get good content. And so to answer Eileen's question, that's the vetting that I do. I'm not going to do a background check on somebody, but take a look at who they are, what they say they are, that sort of thing. But what's most important to me is the content itself. Are they providing something that's interesting, of value, that hasn't been said exactly that way, time and time again, specifically not on my own site. And it's a bar, honestly, that's getting higher and higher every month. So it's becoming increasingly difficult, as a guest blogger to get on my site, because I'm setting the bar higher for myself. I want to deliver even better content, even more value to my readers, and so I'm expecting nothing less from my contributors. And honestly, I've been blessed with some really, really great recurring authors. Wishpond is a great landing page and Facebook content service, and they've been handing me some delicious content on a monthly basis. Stefan Hovnanian has guest blogged for me a couple times. But that's the answer to the question. Look at the content.
Cool.
Okay, so
I really like the way Eileen's blog was one of the first blogs that I guest posted on, and I've always said she was the first person that ever really gave me the time of day and talked to me when I was still wet behind the ears in the blogging industry. I think it's nice to have places that you can get your start from, and Eileen writes great content. I'm always on her YouTube, watching about how she does different things on YouTube, because now my business is slowly trickling over to YouTube now. I just think it's a good process, because you can't accept everybody to come guest post on your site, because SEO is different these days. You have to have that good content for people. Let's do one more question, and then we're going to have to get out of here. Gerard again, he says, do you have a different, more aggressive promotion strategy for longer form content?
That's a fabulous question, and the answer is absolutely. And the reason the answer is absolutely is because if I've written a long form, a pillar post, an epic post, I've done so for a reason. It's not just, hey, I want to let people know that LinkedIn's opening up their cover photos for everybody, just a little bit of news. No, this post is for a purpose. It's to really, truly help people. It's to make an impact. It's to establish my authority, and it's to get business. I'm not going to hold back. I got to be transparent. Most of what I'm writing is designed to help people, and then if they want to take it a step further, I'm available to help them for a fee. That's the whole point. So that epic post absolutely gets promoted more, and by more I mean, number one, we didn't really go through the whole thing that I do, but when you share a post to Google Plus, for instance, in the morning, it's not uncommon to share it again in the afternoon, and I will just often just reshare my original post and say, time zone reshare, or in case you missed it, something like that, because it works. I usually get at least half of the engagement on that second time around than I did the first time. I hit people that missed that first post because they're not on Google Plus mid-morning. They don't get on until late afternoon, early evening. So I may or may not do that with one of these normal posts, or a cheater post, or a newsjacking post. Definitely going to do that with the epic post, and I may even do it the next day with the epic post. So I may do 2 or 3 Google Plus shares with that epic post. With a normal post, I might share that to Twitter 2 to 4 times the first day, and once or twice the next day. And each time I share it, I'll use a different version of the title, pull a question or a quote or something like that. And again, with that epic post, I'm going to tweet that all week long, 2 or 3 times a day minimum. And I'll also put some money into it, frankly. I'll use that for advertising. I love Facebook ads. I love sponsored tweets. and I'll use those and I'll leverage those, and they're not expensive for the kind of thing that we're talking about. I might spend $25, $50 to make sure that epic post gets out into a much wider reach of people, because that's the kind of people you want that kind of content in front of. In other words, if you get to choose what your first impression is going to be with somebody, wouldn't you want it to be the best thing you've ever written?
You never get a second chance to make a first impression, huh?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So so use those epic posts as Facebook ads and promoted tweets. It's extremely successful. They've helped me a lot, not just to pick up new followers on those platforms, but to make a really strong, lasting impression on people. People go to that LinkedIn post and they read it and they're like, wow, I'm going to bookmark it. I think somebody mentioned in the comments, I've already bookmarked that, and I'm going to refer to it. I have people tell me they took that LinkedIn post and they sat down with their clients and went through my guide, my checklist with their clients, and that just kind of blows me away. I mean, really? You're going to take somebody else's content and share it with your clients? But that's cool. I'll take that.
Most definitely. Well, guys, we about wrapped it up. I wish we could sit and talk to Mike all day long. I know that he could just really help us with more blogging stuff, and maybe we'll have him on again in the future. I've been looking through the comments, Carolyn, and I see that Eileen has come up with a hashtag for Mike. So I don't see any others. Do you guys see any others that I may have missed for the hashtags?
No, I don't. I think she picked up on your love of Canva, Mike.
Yeah.
Hashtag Canva Nation.
I'm a firm believer that images are a huge part of successful content marketing in general, so the blogging and the social media side. But I can't create an image to save my life with Photoshop and my old images. If you go back to my older posts from like last year and before, the images suck. They were just bad, and they're so much better now that I found Canva.
I love Canva, and I see your comment, Miss Eileen. I've been meaning to get back over there, so I've just been so busy. It's just been crazy for me. Well, this is the Blogging Warfare Hangout, and I guess Miss Eileen has won the T-shirt Social Fresh. Carolyn will get with you and get your information, Eileen. So we're going to be doing this not next Saturday, but the Saturday after. Every other Saturday, we're going to be having a hangout for blogging tips and blogging strategies that you can use. So glad that you could come and be on the show with us today, Mike. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. This is great. Happy to come back anytime.
Love to have you.
Do you guys have anything else to say?
Well,
Very grateful.
And to reiterate, all genuinely good stuff, and I really enjoyed this, Mike. Thank you very much. And I'm sure the global audience did too.
Definitely. So we will see you guys a week from next Saturday. We'll catch you later.